Hello and welcome back to another video on the arena, and today we're going to be checking out the new DLC of Alchemy for Bloomburrow. So there's new cards, about 30 to be total. The mythics are very interesting, and as a whole it seems like these are very digital friendly cards. If I'm not mistaken, I think that the lead from Hearthstone is coming over to head up some things at Wizards of the Coast, and some of these cards actually give me a similar feeling to Hearthstone. One of the ones reduces the cost of things in your hand, and that seems very Hearthstone related, so really excited about these cards, but I just don't know who the audience is. Do people play Alchemy? Personally, I don't, but this is one of the more interesting Alchemy sets in a while. So let's take a look at Leaf Leap Guide. This one I thought was pretty cool. 1/1 frog, and he's jumping like this. It kind of makes me think of the "Get down, Mr. President," from the memes. Anyways, Vigilance 1/1, 2 mana, Simic Frog. Not great stats. There better be a good ability here. Whenever another creature you control enters, Leap Leaf Guide, and that creature perpetually get +1. So this is the type of stuff that is harder to track in paper Magic, but works really well in Alchemy, where the computer can remember that for you. And you can pay 1 and return a target creature you control to its hand. So works really well with the frog bouncing theme. And every time you bounce something and put it back down, this and that creature perpetually get +1. So whatever I'm bouncing, like a Pawn Prophet, it's getting stronger every time it bounces as well. So definitely one of the cooler ones. Next up, we have Buxton, the Decorated Host. This is a rabbit that has eaten way too much. Look at the size of it. And some of these cards also have a little bit of art that is like Lord of the Rings feeling to it. Doesn't this just look like they're inside a hobbit home right now? Okay, Convoke. So it's making me think of the Knight Errant card. At the beginning of your end step, if you control a tapped creature, which you probably will if you convoke this, seek a non-land permanent with value X or less, which is the number of tapped creatures you control, and put it onto the battlefield. So basically every turn, probably, you're going to be getting 1 free creature from your deck, as long as you have 2 tap creatures, sometimes even 1. So 5 mana 4/4, it's okay. Convoke makes it a lot better. You'll probably cast this for 3 or 2 mana. Imagine doing a hop to it first. So you've got 3 creatures, and then you can tap 3. All you need is 2 mana to cast this. So pretty interesting, good for the rabbits. Recruit Instructor, 2 mana, 1/1. So a lot of these stats are just not great. It's only the abilities that make it work. Whenever 1 or more mice you control attack, draft a card from the Recruit Instructor spellbook. Again, this works really well in Arena and not so good on paper, because check out this spellbook. There's 15 cards. If you right click on here, you can cycle through the different cards. Crumb and Get It, Defiant Strike, all sorts of cards that you can get. And a lot of these cards work well with the Valiant ability. So this is going to be a commander, basically, for your deck that is going to help you trigger your Valiant more often. And whenever you trigger this creature's Valiant ability, you can create a mouse token. So make more mice, go wider. Pretty interesting. So, I mean, these cards are cool, but again, I'm wondering, who are they for? I've got these bat decks that I've been making, so let's take a look at the bats. But the question is, would I not play our regular standard and play this Alchemy version instead, just to get access to these cards? It's really interesting. And maybe Alchemy could become big someday, but I'm not sure. Okay, Darkstar Banisher. This is a bat. And it looks like he's pulling this rat into a black hole, the way it's set up here. Whenever Dark Star Banisher enters, exile target non-land permanent with 3 or less that an opponent controls. Okay, so it's kind of like that Coyote card that comes in and exiles something. When this leaves the battlefield, that owner can seek a card that shares a card type with the exiled card. So let's say I exile a creature with this, then once they kill my Dark Star, they're going to get a replacement creature. What's interesting is, like, with the Coyote or something like that, instead of giving them back exactly what you stole, they get something different. So it's a bit of, it seems like possibly better removal, but let's say you take out like a weak bunny, they could get back a stronger bunny next time. So it's cool, but it's like, is that enough to make me switch out of standard and go for alchemy? I'm not sure. Here's another bat. Sanguine Soothsayer. This one's pretty cool, actually. Flying lifelink. Obviously, you want to be gaining life with these bats. Whenever it attacks, conjure a card named Sanguine Bond into the top 15 cards of your library at random. So this is like another one, harder to do in paper. You'd have to take the top 15 cards, add a card from a sideboard, shuffle it together, and put it back on top of your deck. So interesting. It perpetually gains. You may pay 0 rather than this mana to play it. And when it enters, you draw a card. So it's nice. It replaces itself. It's free, 0 mana. And Sanguine Bond, whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So 5 mana card, usually, you can play for free. And what else is crazy, like, I don't know if you read this, but whenever it attacks. So if this attacks 2 turns in a row, you're going to have 2 Sanguine Bonds that also draw you a card. 3, 4, 5. This is something where I'm like, maybe I should try it out, craft some of these, and see what type of a bat deck you could make in alchemy. But not everybody's into bats. What if you're into raccoons? This one's really interesting and very flavorful. 3 mana haste, 3/3. At the beginning of your end step, a random non-food permanent in your graveyard, so something in your graveyard, it can't be a food, becomes a food artifact, as well as everything else. And you can play that card for as long as it's in your graveyard. So at the beginning of every turn, something in your graveyard gets recursion. And worst case scenario, you can bring it back as a food. Pretty cool. All right, next up, squirrels. Squirrels have been pretty big in the drafts. I don't know how to say this name. Eru, the Acorn Scrounger, 4 mana, pretty expensive for a 3/3. When it enters, you may forage. When you do, conjure a card named Chatter Splitter onto the battlefield. So all of a sudden, it's not that expensive anymore. You're going to pay 4 mana, get a 3/3, and get 1 card onto the battlefield. Whenever 1 or more squirrels you control deal combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice a token, probably a food. If you do, put an acorn counter on each permanent you control named Chitter Spitter, sorry. This one says, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a token. If you do, put an acorn counter on it, and squirrels get +1/+1 for each acorn counter on it. You can also pay 1 mana, tap it, and create a green squirrel. So, 4 mana and forage, you get 7 mana worth of cards on the field. That's pretty good. And this is a card that buffs up all of your other squirrels. So it's pretty interesting. I've not played too much with the squirrels, but I'm sure it's good for some people. Lizards I have played more with, and can we just talk about this art for a second? Really cool. They were holding out on us. Like, all of the Bloomburrow art is cool, but this one would love to see in the main set. So Menace, Ward, pay 3 life. So just like Gev, you've got the Ward, pay 3 life. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, which is like the number one thing that lizards do, play a land, deal a damage, attack with Menace, deal a damage. They're going to take some life, tap, deal a damage. There's a lot of things there. So whenever that happens, conjure a random card from the Dazzling Flame Weaver spellbook, and you may play it this turn. So what can we play? Basically, every time we do what lizards do, you get access to this spellbook. So, Blade Juggler, Body Count, Dead Revels, Drill Bit, Interestingly enough, these seem kind of expensive. All of them are like 3 or 4 mana. I'm looking for something that is like 2 mana. This seems better. Rix. Whenever it enters, discard and draw. Okay. Here's a good one. Scare the Critics, because you can play it for its spectacle cost. Oh, actually, all of these are for a spectacle cost. That's really interesting. So, pretty cool. I like this one. I would definitely want to try it. Another Lizard, the Marshland Horde Master. Whenever this or another lizard enters, this perpetually gains Battle Cry. So if it attacks, all your creatures get +1/+1. Whenever this or another lizard dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's pinging, but what's funny is that sounds more like a bat mechanic, but still, if this dies or another lizard, you're going to ping them down. And look at the art again. The just terror on this lizard's face. He's like, what has happened to my friend? I feel the pain. All right, now we need some otter support. Otters have been worst in the draft, so hopefully this can bring in some help. I'm going to say that otter kind of reminds me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, when he is like trying to save the water kingdom in the north and becomes this huge koi water beast. That's what I'm looking at here. When this enters, conjure a card named Lightning Bolt into your library, and it perpetually gains Storm. Then shuffle. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, draw a card. So pretty good, and every time it enters, which is probably just once, you get a Lightning Bolt. So the main strength of this is from its ability, cast an instant or sorcery, draw a card, and then later the Storm. So you're kind of going to be building up for one big turn where you can use Storm to deal a lot of damage. So it's okay. Here you've got a rat taking out a bird. Pretty gruesome. Target opponent reveals each non-land card from their hand. Choose one of those and exile it. So it's a Thoughtseize. Reveal their hand. You choose one to exile. Strong. If 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can now seek a rat card. And it will cost 1 less to cast. Seems really good. I would play that. It's in black, so more discard mechanics and stuff like that. Okay, you're going to love this bird. Flying. Whenever you cast a creature spell without flying, duplicate 1 into your hand. So you're going to conjure duplicate. The duplicate perpetually gains flying once per turn. So just really cool. You get more and more of your creatures. This comes out. You're basically drawing a card, but you can kind of choose what you draw. So I could have this out, play a creature spell, and get more and more of them into my hand. So really, really strong. That seems really fun. Here we've got Bramble Armor Brawler. It cannot be countered. There's a little bit of countering in this set, but not too much. Trample. Whenever opponent casts a non-creature spell, creature cards in your library, all of your creature cards perpetually get +1/+1. Wow. That's pretty good. I mean, obviously this is very strong against red-blue decks where they want to be playing a lot of spells. Even if they cast just 1 spell to kill this after you've played it, all of your creatures have already gotten +1/+1. I like it. I like it a lot. 4 mana, not too hard to do either. Okay, next up, let's look at Vigorous Farming. Lands you control enter the battlefield untapped. That's okay. At the beginning of your end step, the topmost card in your library gains whenever this land is tapped for mana, add an additional green. So it's ramp. Fountain Port Charmer, whenever it enters, creature cards in your hand all cost 1 less. This is the one that I was saying is kind of like Hearthstone-esque. Pretty cool. And what would be awesome is if you use this and this. So you pay 1 mana, return it to your hand. All of a sudden, play it again. All your creatures cost 1 less. Perpetually. Does this at some point almost become like 1 mana, everything gets cheaper bounce it, 1 mana, everything gets cheaper. I mean, this is pretty strong. It's at the uncommon as well, so you should see it pretty frequently if you decide to draft this. Seek a non-basic land card. If this was kicked, put it on the battlefield. Okay, pretty strong. Goes well in the squirrel decks with Forge. Charge Conjuration. At the beginning of your upkeep, instant and sorcery spells gain. This costs 1 less to cast. Sacrifice this enchantment. Conjure a card of your choice from this spellbook. This is really good. Every turn, all of my spells in my hand are getting 1 less expensive. So after 3 turns, a lot of spells are 1 or 2 mana or free. That's really, really good if you're trying to do a lot of Storm. And then this spellbook only has 3 cards in it. Create 2 goblins, and this has Storm. The other options are another Storm card, exile the top card of your library, you may play it, and Grape Shot. So this is going to be really helpful for those red-blue decks to help them finish a game and win. Brave Meadow Guard, when it enters, conjure a card named Might of the Meek. Cool. So 2 mana, and you get a 1 mana card into your hand. And whenever this becomes a target of a spell or ability, put a +1 counter on it. So again, you can use this Might of the Meek to trigger it. 3 mana, you get a 2/2, which can keep growing. Interestingly enough, Might of the Meek also lets you draw a card. So you play the Brave, that's 1 card. It gives you another card, so it already pays for itself. And you pay that one, and it gives you another card again. So really good. You can play 3 cards and not run out of steam with that. So I think it's pretty strong, uncommon. Cindercone Smite. I like this one a lot too. Deals 2 damage to target creature, and then create a treasure token if you were not the starting player. So if you play this in your deck, you can also choose to not go first and get payoff from that later. Pretty cool. Putrifying Boar, lifelink. 4 mana for a 4/5. Huge, very scary. When it attacks, whenever a boar attacks, so I don't know if what other boars are there in here? The red one, right? The lightning one. Whenever a boar attacks, each non-land card in the defending player's hand gains. When you cast a spell, lose 1 life. So again, this works very good on Arena. Would be very difficult to do in Paper Magic. If they've got 4 cards in their hand, if they want to cast those, they're going to lose 4 life. This also has lifelink. 4 attack on a lifelink is really, really strong. And it's probably one of the biggest creatures in the set. So this looks strong. I would definitely draft it if you get the chance. You get a 2-time boon, which says whenever you sacrifice 1 or more permanents, seek a non-land card. Well, it just turns their food into clues 2 times. It's okay. Down to the last 9 here. Chittering Skull Speaker. Starting intensity, which is interesting. You'll see it again on another card. 0. Whenever this enters, cards you own named Chittering Skull Speaker intensify by 1. It's a funny name for a mechanic. Like, things are beginning to intensify. Also, look in the background there. There's like a lot of different squirrels all kind of huddling around. Then you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is this Skull Speaker's intensity. So the first time you enter this, you draw 1 card, lose 1 life. The second time you draw 2 cards, lose 2 life, draw 3. It's cool. It could kill you. I mean, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You could lose 10 life if you play all 3 of these. You'd also draw 10 cards, so it could work in the right deck. I just would be nervous about losing too much life with it. Now this one's insane. Ristic Study getting printed here. 5 mana, Archival Whirl, gift a Ristic Study. Shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library and draw 7 cards. If the gift was not promised, each other player also shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library and draw 7 cards. So you kind of have to balance out here. Do you want them to draw 7 cards right now? Or do you want them to whenever an opponent casts a spell, draw a card unless they pay 1. Yeah. So do you want to pay more for your spells, or do you want to give them more cards in their hand? Pretty interesting. This would be an amazing top deck if you're in a top deck battle, because you give them a Ristic Study, which is fine. You've got enough mana to pay for it. And then you draw 7 cards. So you're going to be able to win off of this. I think it's a pretty cool top end for blue. Tempest Trapper. Add 2 mana in any combinations of colors. Spend it to cast instants and sorcery spells. Okay, cool. So tap 2 mana, 4 mana, 2 mana Mana Dork. I think it's worth it. Really strong. Whenever you cast your 3rd spell each turn, exile a random card from your library. And you may play it for free? What? I mean, you could get a land, but geez. A Mana Dork whenever you cast your 3rd spell. 3rd spell is pretty hard. I think it sounds more exciting than it is, because I think a lot of the time you're going to get like a 2 mana creature out for this, or worst case scenario, a land. So it's some value. I'd say the best part about this card is it has 5 defense, which is really good. And it's a Mana Dork. You can tap it and get 2 mana. Really good in the red-blue decks, so could be interesting. Whenever this or another rat enters, Conjur, think twice into your graveyard. Spells you cast from your graveyard this turn cost 2 or less if you have 7 more in your graveyard and you tap this creature. So 3 mana, draw a card. And you feel, I mean, the main benefit of this is that whenever a rat enters, you're filling up your graveyard. And the nice benefit is that later, if you're towards the end of the game, you can use that to draw cards. If you tap the Scholar, you could play 1 blue mana to draw a card. I think it's cool. I would run as many as you can. Gift a tap fish, draw 2 cards. If the gift was promised, seek 2 non-land cards instead. So 3 mana, early game, don't gift it, and draw 2. Late game, I would probably give them a fish and make sure you don't draw more lands and you have stuff you can actually play. This is the other one that I think is kind of like Lord of the Rings-esque. Looks like the Fellowship all together here. Look at the top 6 cards of your library, put a creature with mana 3 or less onto the battlefield. Then conjure a duplicate of it onto the battlefield. It has a base power and toughness 1/1. This is awesome. I love it. Basically, you're getting the offspring mechanic from a card from the top of your library. Obviously, it does not work on legendary creatures, but it's really, really nice. I'm trying to think about this. Mana 3 or less. Like, what's an example of something you could pull out? You could pull out one of these, Flying Lifelink 2/1s, and a 1/1 copy of it. Whenever they attack, you're going to get more Sanguine Bonds. So pretty cool. Plus, it works well in the rabbits where you just want to go wide. Another interesting card that works well on Arena, not so well in paper. Whenever the Sand Cloud Harbinger enters, conjure 3 cards named Sunscorched Desert into the top 10 cards of each player's library at random. So basically, you get 3 cards in the top 10, they get 3 cards. Whenever a player plays a desert, they draw a card and you gain 3 life. So it's important. Either way, if I play a desert or you play a desert, I gain 3 life every time. And when this desert enters, it deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. Interesting that you can do planeswalker. This is kind of reminding me of Hearthstone, where you can like put cards on people's decks that they don't want to draw. So you're kind of clogging their draw. For 3 mana, you're putting 3 cards into their top. Best case, I mean, if they play all 3 of them, you gain 9 life. This is like pretty devastating for people. 9 life. I think it's good from what I can tell. It's also a horse. We don't get horses that often. Cottontail Caretaker. Whenever this enters, choose a white creature card in your hand, and it gains offspring. Cool. What would be fun is to use this to give itself offspring, like the next one. Then you can do that and then get 2 have offspring. I don't know. It just sounds kind of fun. 2/2 for 2. It's good. And our last card. This one's really cool, and I like the swans. They call it a bird scout though. So intensity again, whenever a creature with flying enters, if it is this card, awestruck, all of the awestruck ones intensify by 1. It'd be nice if they could just condense that down. I mean, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines of text to tell us what intensity is. It's pretty long. As long as this card's intensity is 3 or more, it becomes a 5/4 flyer with vigilance and is named Radiant Swan. So you have to play 3 of these out. They're all 1 mana, so that's not that bad. 1, 2, 3 mana 3 times. And then you can kind of see like it's like the story of the ugly duckling in the bottom to the swan in the sky. So it's an awestruck Signet, which must mean that little one. And then when you play 3 of them, it transforms into the Radiant Swan. Really cool. It almost feels like a Wilds of Eldraine card to me because you've got that theme to it. But yeah. So this is it. This are all the new alchemy cards. Really interesting. They have some potential to be fun. Like, I look at these and I think, man, these are some really fun mechanics, breathing some new life into Bloomburrow. But the question I still have at the end of my video is, who are these cards created for? It's like DLC. Who uses these? Is this popular? Can you guys let me know? Are you into this? Should I get into this? Again, this Frog Scout is hilarious. So yes, hope you enjoyed the video and going through the cards together. Leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you for another video very soon.